Messianic consciousness, key points to consider in understanding this concept. So this is all relating to us getting above this system, isn't it, where the slave is ruling. We want to get into the house, we want to get into the palace of the king. We don't want to be subject to a slave that's ruling, because all he can do is make us like slaves, because a slave only knows how to behave like a slave, and that's why it consists of a lot of do's and don'ts. You know, this is not messianic consciousness. Messiah is a king. Okay, so we've got to enter into that. You've got to be like children of the king, in the palace of the king, face to face with the name YHVH. Let's go and have a look at this then. Right, so I recently watched this video by Derek Prince. Okay, should have put a capital name there for him actually, but not to worry. And he said something very, very wonderful. He said the stomach is a wonderful servant but a terrible master, and that really struck a chord with me, because you'll see where I'm going. We'll see where I'm going when I work through this, because as I've put there, this begs the question, what is the most essential master, king, organ that rules over our bodies? Okay, because he's true with what he says. The stomach is a wonderful servant. You know, think about all the wonderful kosher food that, you know, you prepare and eat. Certainly I do in my life, and I have done for many, many years. You know, all the kosher wine, things like that I drink. Well, I don't drink kosher wine anymore. I make grape juice, but I have drunk it in the past. I certainly wouldn't make non-kosher. I make a point of the wine being kosher. The wine that goes on the Shabbat table is what the wine that I've made for myself, the grape juice I've made for myself, and squeezed the grapes and everything. So I think about the stomach is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. If you are governed by your stomach, and I have been at times, and you're a dreadful slave. Anybody who's a slave to any part of the flesh whatsoever, other than the king that should be ruling over our bodies, you'll struggle, and it's a horrible feeling when a particular aspect of your anatomy seems to have a life of its own and seems to be able to dominate even over your soul. I mean, when we put ourselves when we find ourselves to that level of subjugation, it's exile indeed, isn't it? And this is where we've got to work to overcome you know, our lower natures. Anyway, let's go on from there. This is going back to this concept of the priest. It'll all tie in. It's wonderful how it all ties in. So Melchizedek was a priest, and priest represents the right hand side of divinity, chesed, loving kindness. Okay, and that's when I said that's at the place of the advocate, isn't it? Abraham is synonymous with the Sephiroth of chesed, loving kindness, associated with our heart. Therefore, he is connected to the concept of the priest. The priest is really, the ultimate priest is the sphere of loving kindness. You know, it's the light of chesed. That's what the priest is. Michael is a priest in Metatron's tabernacle that Moshiach copied, by the way. The tabernacle below was based on the tabernacle of Metatron above, where Michael was the high priest, and it goes, there's other levels to that revelation within the Zohar. It's difficult to translate that into a practical way, other than to point out that if you look at your body being your temple, okay, this is pointing to Melchizedek, a priestly king, if you like. We're going to get there. What is the ultimate king of our body and of our own temples? And this is at the microcosmic level, which is easiest for us to understand. But then we can understand at that macrocosmic level, can't we? So there's all these things to consider. The ideal condition of our heart is when it is fully circumcised and the hardness removed. This is in accordance with the new covenant, when the Torah can be then written into our hearts. This new covenant came to us via the death and suffering of Moshiach ben Yosef. And then I've put there are two layers to circumcision, the Orla and the Priya. Abraham, according to the writings of the sages, were only circumcised in one layer. Nowadays, this is not a valid circumcision. Okay, so Abraham ended up giving a tenth of his, he gave a tithe to Melchizedek. So one of my inspirations was, well, if why would he give, if he's a priest and he's at the level of priest, why would he give a tenth to Melchizedek? And I was thinking maybe because Abraham represents the circumcision of the all, or the outer covering of the foreskin, where the more finer priya, Abraham didn't have that, and maybe Melchizedek represents that double circumcision, you know, and that's why the priest that we ultimately, that's why Yeshua was a correction for that, wasn't it? Yeshua, Moshiach ben Yosef, came instead of Yitzchak, Abraham's son, because Yitzchak wasn't born, he wasn't on the side of chesed, loving kindness, so he couldn't be the he couldn't be a rectification for the fact that Abraham was not fully circumcised, because he was on the opposite side of divinity, he was on the left side of divinity. He represented some of the ability. He's like Gevurah, he represented Gevurah, which is strength and might, but it's also harsh judgment and severity. So there's a positive side to that, there's a very negative side to that, and that negative side represents the darkness, okay, that there needs to be an end to. So he sets an end to darkness, that judgment and death and everything that comes along the harshness of the Torah. There's got to be an end to that, and Yeshua is the rectification to bring an end to that darkness and purify the Torah of Moshe. So when you think he came in the order or according to the words of Melchizedek, and Melchizedek reveals this, by the way, that Yeshua is the Mashiach, perhaps Abraham's correction didn't come via Yitzchak, it came via Moshiach ben Yosef, and that's why the ram represented Moshiach ben Yosef, and the ram was given instead of Yitzchak. So I hope you can understand that, and therefore Yeshua called himself a priest. You know, that scripture that we just quoted from Psalms regarding according to the words or the speech of Melchizedek, a priest forever according to the words of Melchizedek. So I hope you can understand there's things to consider. These are all Kabbalistic things, but and how do we understand it at the simple level? You know, these right, we've got a heart. There's two ways to circumcise our heart. We're going to go through that very soon, the two aspects of circumcision of our hearts, right? That's you know, we've got two layers to our heart that needs circumcised. The Moshiach ben Yosef is part of the process through which YHVH himself contributes towards that circumcision. We've got things that we need to work on to overcome our lower base natures, but there's something that YHVH himself does in order to bring about a true circumcision of our hearts. Okay, so there's an intervention, a powerful intervention that YHVH does through the suffering of Moshiach ben Yosef, and through him being in exile with us. There's something that YHVH is unable to accomplish through Moshiach ben Yosef that is connected to circumcising our hearts and writing the Torah into our hearts. Okay. Could the concept of Melchizedek be connected therefore to the ideal level of our circumcised hearts, and can we through this gain closer access to them, YHVH, in accordance to the level to which our hearts are double circumcised, the circumcision we do for ourselves and the circumcision YHVH does with us? I'm going to have a look at the verses that point that out. How is the concept of circumcised hearts, the priest and the power of loving kindness connected to Archangel Michael and his power for advocacy, circumcised lips for Israel and the nations? So we're going to try and link everything up together. This whole, we want the true master to reign in our bodies. You know, we don't want a stomach to reign. We don't want an uncircumcised heart to reign over us. We don't want uncircumcised lips to reign over us. We want us, and we certainly don't want, you know, for the case of a man, impure, filthy, uncircumcised male anatomy. you know, and all that would, all the impurity and filth that comes about as a result of that. We don't want that to be the master of our lives. We want what is godly and right to be the master of our lives. So we need to be looking at all these for inspiration. What exactly do we need to do, and what is Yeshua and YHVH doing during this exile to bring us to that place where we've got the true King ruling and reigning within our bodies, okay, to the glory of the name YHVH. And part of that circumcision and perfection that we've undergone through this dreadful exile that we've all suffered, we can be brought closer to the name YHVH. We can be truly children of the King over kings of kings. Okay, we have the right King within us, and through that we serve the King over kings, who is the Moshiach. And then through that, you know, through us being, you know, having the rightful King in the place within us, we are serving the King over kings, the Moshiach, who is the Viceroy of YHVH, his name on earth. But through that revelation and all the glory about what's been accomplished through this exile to bring us to that place where we have got the true King reigning in our bodies, and we've got the true King of Kings reigning over the whole of humanity, and the true priest in place, and the office of prophet fully restored to us, and YHVH being the King over kings of kings. Okay, so let's go and have a look. Let's go and have a look, because it's glorious. More glory. So 3 circumcisions, inner and outer. We've got 3 Mashiachim, Moshe, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. So in total we've got 6 aspects of circumcision if we count the inner and the outer of each. And when you look, it looks like there's 2 aspects to each circumcision. So there's obviously 2 to the male anatomy. There's what I've called the aula, the outer foreskin, and the inner membrane. The more subtle inner membrane. Okay, so like for example, the Ishmaelites, they circumcise their flesh, but they don't do like the full circumcision like what the Jews do, where there's the foreskin removed and the priya. And I've put, this is a novel interpretation, this somehow related to the 6 days of creation. Our work to perfect creation and rectify the fall of Adam and man. It's all about being circumcised, humbled, you know, removing those egotistical impulses that keep us forever enslaved in this Edomite exile. So let's go and have a look at it. So there's the circumcision of the male anatomy, the aula and the priya, the thin inner membrane, Mashiach ben Yosef, the righteous foundation of the world. And this is at the level of priest, because we're told he'll forever be a priest according to the speech of Melchizedek. Okay. Or in some ways it's sometimes it's translated be a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. So we know Mashiach we know Yeshua aligned himself to this particular to this particular verse from Psalms. He quoted this regarding himself, or this was quoted regarding Yeshua. Okay, the priest forever in accordance to the speech of Melchizedek. So Mashiach ben Yosef is related to the office of the priest. Okay, and then we've got, obviously, that links us up to Melchizedek, to Abraham, the right side, and it also to Michael. Okay, so there's connections through Yeshua, even though we know Mashiach ben Yosef came instead of Yitzchak, who is the left hand side of divinity, and also he was also left hand side of it. He's also the left wing of the bird of redemption. He's still the priest, which is the right side, still connected to the office of the priest. Mashiach ben Yosef is connected to the office of priest. Circumcision of our lips, able to speak the pure language of Hebrew, alpha-numerical, alpha outer aula, priya inner numerical language, and maths referred to as the universal language. It could be either way, that, not too sure, but you know, got to understand we've got to be converted back to this pure language of Hebrew, else we will never have Hebraic minds, and we will never fully be able to attach to the name YHVH, because he communicates to us with Hebrew. He communicates to us with all languages, but he primarily communicates to us as Hebrew. But Hebrew is not just verbal, it's numerical also. So can you see there's two aspects to this language in the purification process. We've got to be able to speak Hebraically, but it's not just verbally, it's mathematically also. And then also note, Aaron the priest, representing love and kindness, was his mouthpiece. Therefore, two aspects to circumcised speech. You know, Moshe and Aaron. You know, Moshe complained of having uncircumcised lips, and you know, Hashem sent him, YHVH sent him Aaron to be able to speak for him. So you've got to understand these two together, Moshe and Aaron, in order to be able to speak properly and reach this level of circumcision of our lips. This is the office of the prophet. So we've got the priest and the prophet, and then obviously we've got the king. So what's the king? Circumcision of our hearts. So both the circumcision of our outer foreskin, the work we do ourselves do to overcome the outer husk of our evil inclination and natures, and then there's the inner work done by YHVH himself to refine us and perfect us. And this is level of Moshiach ben David, isn't it? And when I said, when I asked the question after, you know, the stomach is a wonderful servant, but lousy master, a lousy king. What therefore is the perfect king of us? And that is definitely a circumcised heart. You know, the ultimate king within is a circumcised heart. But there's three offices really involved, isn't there? There's a circumcised heart that's supported by circumcised lips and a circumcised priest. They all work together. We've got to have all these within us to attain that level of perfection, don't we? The priest and the prophet and the king. And these are the three offices of if you like, that represent YHVH's sovereignty in this world. The priest, the prophet and the king all work together to show, to establish the kingdom of YHVH on earth as it is in heaven, but also to let us know that he's the sovereign power. And it's through these three offices, isn't it, priest, prophet and king, that YHVH's sovereignty is firmly established. So we've got these three, and we've got a work to do with this, but we also get some help. Moshe had some work to do, but YHVH gave him some help. Okay, and same as with this, we've got to overcome our lower natures, but we also get some help, the suffering of Moshiach ben Yosef within us, the pure one, suffering with us in exile. We have to do this, but we also get some help, Aaron, and then circumcisions of our hearts. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. The verses which ask us to circumcise our heart, and then we're told that YHVH will circumcise our heart also. So all these function in unity because they are all informed by our intellect, specifically the synthesis of wisdom and understanding, which is da'ath, knowledge. So obviously we've got a circumcised heart, but our heart doesn't speak through the emotions, you know, because we could be in trouble. Our emotions can be sometimes quite erratic. Our emotions got to get calmed down. How are they calmed down? How are they brought to a place of shalom, so that we're not, you know, all over the map emotionally, and we truly are humbled? This usually comes from a revelation, you know, wisdom and understanding, godly wisdom, godly understanding, and our da'ath, and this informs our heart, you know, and the truth as well informs our heart. The truth is very humbling, you know, and we can gain the truth from analysing the Torah and analysing even the wisdom that we get when we look at the 6,000 years of history which we've been subject to, and gain an understanding of exactly what YHVH has been doing, getting insight, and then some synthesis between that wisdom and understanding in the form of da'ath, holy supernal knowledge. And this da'ath is our understanding really of Moshiach, our understanding of Mashiach, the truth about Mashiach, not an exiled understanding of Mashiach, but the truth about Mashiach. And Moshe represents supernal da'ath. And through that knowledge, it will help all these, that aspect that we have to do for ourselves is done when we are doing a work below. And then YHVH is able to complete and help us and guide us to that perfection. And the final revelation of YHVH will be the ultimate perfection. We won't have any more foreskin of our there won't be any foreskin when he finally reveals himself, and he finally will reveal himself. This revelation of Mashiach ben David will come from heaven when we have completed all the steps below, all the 999 steps of Mashiach ben Yosef. And that final 1000th step will be revealed from above. So it's what we do below and then what YHVH does below, but from above, and it all married together. So Metatron is the force that denies us the freedom to live in accordance to the true king, because he is the slave who rules and is a lousy slave. He's a lousy king. The slave shouldn't rule. Our heart should not be fearful of punishment if we don't live just as the slave master tells us. And it shouldn't be excited by the thought of being rewarded for the good that we do. It should be for the sake of a revelation of the name YHVH. The slave is never going to reveal YHVH completely. Only the King of Kings can reveal YHVH. So we've got these kings here, the circumcision of the male anatomy, circumcision of our lips, and then we've got the king over kings, haven't we? And even our intellect to somewhere, especially when our intellect is united, is Torah intellect, it's truth, and it's true holy inspiration. And that's like a king as well, isn't it? So our circumcised heart is really the King of Kings, and that will be manifest for real. There will be a person that will come with a perfect circumcision of the heart, and this is why we've got to unite all the concepts of Mashiach together. Why? Because only when we unite all these aspects of circumcision together that we need to go through in order to rectify the fall of Adam, to perfect Adam and elevate ourselves back home. Only when we've gone through that will YHVH be fully revealed. So we've got to get to this place of king over kings. We've got to reveal Mashiach ben Yosef, and there's a lot that we can do below in order to accomplish that. Let's go and have a look at the verses that indicate this. Oh, I hope I haven't jumped. Oh yeah, I've just jumped. Why did that jump? Just wait a minute, let it just come up. Alright. I think there were some verses involved in this. Okay. Right, okay, so we should be getting somewhere close now. So we've got this one. You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart, therefore be no more stiff-necked. So that's the commandment to us, isn't it? You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart. And then we've got this from Jeremiah. So we've got the new covenant that's written in our hearts. And this, anybody who's experienced and been touched by the light of Mashiach ben Yosef will feel to some extent this revelation. It was something definitely, absolutely, when I was first born again and I received this spark of the soul of Mashiach ben Yosef in my life, in my own heart, I 100%, I totally and utterly felt, like God himself was writing on my heart. The drastic change between the wicked, evil, self-centered person that I was to suddenly having a heart where I could I'd never been able to empathise. I'd never been able to, like, I was almost like a sociopath. You know, I was so trapped in layers and layers of exile that I could barely even relate to another human being suffering. You know, it just very, very strange, dark place to be, you know. And but when my heart was touched and I was cleansed by this incredible power, spiritual power from above, and born again, you know, all of a sudden my heart was like flesh. For the first time ever, it'd been just like, it was just like a block of stone. It really was. I had a block of stone. I was so cynical and so, you know, sarcastic and so unsympathetic and so unkind and uncaring and so selfish. You know, that's just the exile into which I was born, and I was just so relieved to actually feel emotions for another human being. And I really just felt, you know, I couldn't tolerate feeling angry, and I'd felt angry all my life. And I couldn't tolerate cursing and swearing. I literally, my heart couldn't tolerate it. So I went through this circumcision of that heart, but obviously we're still trapped in exile. And slowly the foreskin grows back, because we woken up, and then we go to the church to figure out what's gone on, and the circumcision grows back, and then we've got to start all over again, making ourselves acceptable before YHVH. So it's really difficult. We can be woken up, but we can fall back asleep again so easily, because we're in such a dark exile. Like me, I didn't even know how to speak. I had no idea what's gone on. So there's me thinking I'll have to go to the church to find out and be around these people, and you know, thought I was doing a good thing by going to the church and one thing and another, and honestly, it's a slippery slope there from there on in. And this wonderful, like, you feel like you're a child, you know, like sometimes when you are growing up, you're innocent and you've got all these ideals about all these grown-ups, and then suddenly you start to see the evil seep through, and you bear witness to just how, what lying, cheating, and you're there in silence, aren't you, as a child, and you're not even able to speak. And you know, slowly but surely, you know, you're this pure innocent child, but you're slowly contaminated by all the reality of the sin and deprivation into which the adult world has descended. And even teenagers, you know, you start to go to school and hear what other kids are saying, and you know, and all the depravity that goes on even in young kids' life, and suddenly, you know, this innocence, you're soon robbed of it. And that's like when you're born again, you know, like everything in the world is brand new and shiny. Your heart is brand new and shiny. You couldn't even think bad thoughts. Go to church and you soon get sullied up. But I remember it. I remember it. And somehow I've got to try from below to recreate that I've experienced, that were given to me from above. And it's proven, in my case, rather more hard work than I could have ever imagined. I wish I'd have just clung to that initial revelation, just clung hold of it. If I'd have known how precious it was, I'd have avoided everybody. But you just don't know. We're in the depth of exile, and we're subject to all the forces of exile. We are tempted and tested, and you know, like I say, the foreskin grows back over, and then we've got to go through that process of you shall circumcise your heart, you know, YHVH did it. And then we've got to go through it. So behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was a husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbour and each his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So I know I'm part of the new covenant. 100%. I feel it very powerfully in my soul. To what degree I've sullied that marriage contract up, and I hope I'm not brought to account. And then this is where there's a double circumcision, isn't there? And the Lord your God will circumcise your heart. Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness there's some input from above, because if it were just left to us, we might be in exile a lot longer than the time that has been allotted to us. And the heart of your offspring, thank goodness for that also. So that you may love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, for the sake of your life. Okay, and I've had a look at that, for the sake of your life. I've analysed both these verses, and incredible. Come at you. I've put 598, I've highlighted there. I think we're going to have a look at something now. Okay, so this is when I talked about why do we have a circumcised heart, so we can become an advocate. There's these two verses down here, and I was looking, because when I'm analysing the concept of Moshiach, all the messianic verses, the numbers come up for Michael, just as we've seen the 404, the 808, the 101, the 202. It comes up all the time. Like Yehuda, I think the square ordinal of Yehuda is 202. You know, it comes up all the time, multiples of 101, which is Michael. Right, and because of that, I'm thinking, I wonder where in the Torah I will find the concept of the advocate. If he's an advocate for Israel, you've got the adversary and he's the advocate. Is there anywhere in the Torah or the Tanakh where it mentions the concept of the advocate? Is there any word where the word advocate is used? And I only found this, I can't find it in the, it is in the Hebrew, obviously. But when you look at the English translations, this is taken from Chabad.org. If you look at the English language, Jason's, the word that they use is advocate for the dumb, you know, or the, I don't think they use the word dumb, but, you know, instead of open your mouth, they actually use the word advocate. So that's how I got to figure out that this open your mouth, ptach picha, it really means advocate. That's the word, and that's where we've got to get to. We've got to have such a circumcised heart that's informed by the truth, you know, informed by our intellect, the truth we've been able to discern, the wisdom, the understanding, and then the da'ath, the synthesis of that. We've got circumcised lips. You know, we're able to speak in a pure holy language and think like Hebrews. For instance, our intellect should be an Hebraic intellect, not a exilic intellect, an exilic mindset. It should be a Hebrew mindset informed by the truth. The two are synonymous. Hebrew and truth are totally synonymous. The numbers make sure that you know that they're synonymous. To be a Hebrew means you're truthful. Okay, so, and our intellect's informed by a truthful understanding of analysing the last 16,000 years of history, not this exilic mindset which says, oh, look at all those Christians doing evil, that's just evil, false idol worship and stuff. And there's elements to that, there's truth, but there's a deeper truth that's hidden. You've got to be able to see exactly what YHVH, truth from not our personal experience of exile, but from a perspective of YHVH, the ultimate truth, you know, the bigger picture, not just our own individual exilic perspective, which is usually very restricted and constricted and very lacking in clarity, a lot of obscurity when it comes to assessing reality from our personal, individual or even collective experience of exile. But the more higher up we go till we reach from the perspective of YHVH, that kind of perspective really should inform our heart, and these are the things that we should speak about, and these are the things that should help us to become advocates. Okay, it's the higher perspective. When we're looking down and realising all the glorious things that YHVH has been trying to do, we should step up the advocate. We should be advocates, because when we are from our own individual, personal, little limited perspective, we're usually the adversaries and the accusers in this world. We're accusing everybody else of all the crimes, even those the crimes against us and things like that. We're really biting at the stick rather than seeing who's wielding it and why and what's the positive purpose of that, knowing that YHVH only does good. So it's just stepping up again, that advocate. And we can see this will, and the Lord your God will circumcise your heart. is related to open your mouth. 598. So circumcised heart should lead us to open our mouth and advocate, basically. And it's taken from here in Proverbs. Open your mouth for the dumb, to the cause of all whose help has passed. You know, open your mouth, judge justly, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy. Well, I'll tell you now, Moshiach ben Yosef is in a place of neediness. He has lowered himself to the absolute point of pure humility. You cannot go lower than him. You can't be more needy than him. You can't be more poor than him. Okay, and we've got to advocate for him, you know, as much as anything, and see the good that has been done from him suffering with us in exile. Behold, your king shall come to you. So this here, where do we get these numbers from? Okay, so if we add the regular plus the mispar gadol for the big numberings, the big letter kaf, if we add both those two numbers together, we get to 1676, which is exactly the same as the regular and the mispar gadol of this. So behold, your king shall come to you. We've just been talking, haven't we, about what is the king, the kings that we've got. The kings are circumcised lips, circumcised male anatomy, but the king over kings is a circumcised heart. You know, like I say, it's all informed. All those things are working in unity together, and there's the two aspects to each level of circumcision, isn't there? And they're all working together. Behold, your king shall come to you. So these are your king, your inner Moshiach, and that will obviously manifest. That's at a macrocosmic level. We get all those things in place, and that we're going to see the macrocosmic level of incarnation of Mashiach ben David, and our ultimate king is going to come to us. Behold, your king shall come to you. And this is talking about Mashiach. But the ultimate king is Mashiach. He comes as the viceroy for the name YHVH, and it's the light of YHVH that we so desire. It's his light and him that we want to ultimately draw near to. And there's all these processes involved in that. It's all glorious and wonderful. So let's go and have a look. I think I've just gone too far again. Let's see where we get to with this. No, maybe not. Right, so let's just go and have a look at this concept of the king over kings of kings. So this is a concept of king of kings, isn't it? This is Mashiach. This is our heart, our fully circumcised heart, if you like, the king of kings. And obviously we related that to Mashiach ben David. And he also said that there's the three offices, isn't there? The priest, the prophet and the king. So the prophets are our lips, because obviously prophets speak, and we know that that was related to Moshe, because he mentioned about his uncircumcised lips, and we've got then YHVH helped him to circumcise his lips, open his lips, so that people could understand that he sent him Aaron. So that's the help from above. Moshe had to do whatever was below. He obviously had to open his own mouth and speak. King over kings, Melech Malchei, comes to 190 plus 82. Comes to 172. The mispar gadol, 670, 94, comes to 764. We've just come across that number, haven't we? 94 plus 82 is 176. And then we've got these numbers as well. The 172 plus the 764 comes to 936. And then these two numbers added up together, the 190 and the 670, comes to 860. Straight away though, we've got a connection, haven't we? Said King David, who's our circumcised heart, is Mashiach ben David. 82 is the ordinal of Mashiach ben David. So straight away we've got that link. Straight away we've got that link to Mashiach ben David. There's more to come. Then we've got this link. Obviously Mashiach ben David doesn't come and he's not revealed just on his own. There is unity between the Mashiachim. So there's unity between circumcised lips and the circumcised anatomy, and the male anatomy and the circumcised heart. So buried in Shechem, which is obviously related to Joseph. This is about him being buried in Shechem, his grave in Shechem. When they brought the bones out of Egypt, he was ultimately buried in Shechem. So that's 670. So we can see how part of our circumcised heart comes about as a revelation of Joseph. It's all connected to a revelation of Joseph and what he has been accomplishing in exile. It's perfectly connected to this Melech Malcheh. You know, like it says that King David is the throne, Moshiach ben Yosef is the throne which King David sits on. So the throne of David is Moshiach ben Yosef. And you can see that there, look. Melech Malcheh, 670, 670, 94, 94, 764, 764. There's got to be perfect unity between the Meshachim. Okay, perfect unity between all the concepts of the Mashiach. This is what opens up all the doors, it opens up all the channels, it gets Metatronic thinking out of the way and brings in that messianic consciousness. So we can, if we add these two together, the 94 and the 105, that comes to 199. It's a very significant number. And then the Mispah Gadol, adding these two numbers up, comes to 1090. We can see that that's connected again to there. You know, it's perfection, utter perfection, utter perfection. Okay, so this is another thing. We're going to be looking at these numbers now, because we'll see how Joseph brings about peace. You know, like I said, Yaakov and Esau have got to have peace together. Body and soul have got to have peace, Israel and the nations. So Oseh Shalom, who makes peace? Okay, this is taken from Isaiah. You know, I form light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I am the Lord who does all these. So that's taken from Isaiah. It comes to 94, which is exactly the same as Berin Din Shechem. It's exactly the same as Melech Malcheh. 94 is also 2 times Yaakov, the ordinal of Yaakov. Okay, so obviously there's unity between Yaakov, and Yaakov is part of that whole process. He represents the soul that must make peace. Oseh to make is connected to Esav. Okay, he makes peace with Esau. We haven't yet got there. So this is the Mispah Gadol of who makes peace. So you can see there the normal gematria is 94. The Mispah Gadol of who makes peace is 105. So we can see these two together are exactly here, buried in Shechem. So 100% Joseph is the truth. The whole concept of Joseph, the whole, you know, Od Yosef Chai, and then everything to do with, you know, the bones of Joseph and then buried in Shechem, every single part of his life is part of the truth that's given over to Yaakov. There's purpose and meaning in everything. Everything is part of a revelation of the name YHVH. All the truth regarding Joseph is part of a revelation, and in that light we see the revelation of the light of YHVH, and that is the truth that empowers Yaakov, that is then able to make peace with Esau. So we've got those connections there. Okay, bearing in mind the reason why I'm going through this is because of this powerful connection to Melech Malcheh. The 199, which is connected to buried in Shechem, which is connected to who makes peace, both these numbers added together, who makes peace. And we've also got this number, haven't we? This is the Mispah Gadol, 14,016. It comes to 8 times 177, which is 8 times Gan Eden. Also, this word here, Malchim, kings, comes to 140 plus 59, which is 199. We're talking about King of Kings. Okay, 140 plus 59 is 199, and that is Moshiach, who is in exile, suffering until we are strong enough to overcome the powers of exile, and Yeshua, added together 199. They are the kings. Mashiach ben Yosef and Moshiach have to unite with Mashiach ben David. They unite and he becomes the King of Kings. These two kings. that are united together. Okay, they are the Malche, he's the Melech. And then we've got Melech Malche HaMalachim, the king over kings of kings. Okay, which is YHVH. So this unity here reveals the unity above. And then we've got always an opposite, haven't we? We've always got the opposite force. Samael is the opposite, you know, like I said, Metatron, you've got the angel of the Lord, and then you've got the backside of him, it's Samael, which is really a name for Satan. It's the power of Satan, the adversary, the accuser. So, you know, there we go, the opposite force. There's got to be free choice. We've got a work to do. I mean, circumcising your heart, circumcising your lips, and circumcising your will, purifying yourself so that we're like Joseph, pure and holy and not sexually deviant. It's a big straining, and it's a big straining in an exile as powerful as what we have to suffer. I talked about Yeshua didn't getting tempted. Now we don't have to face that temptation, level of temptation. He did for us. Okay, he endured the temptation for us, and we have got to. His righteousness becomes our righteousness, because our righteousness is as filthy rags. And you know, if we want to stand before the King over kings of kings, we've got to be properly dressed. And if we're thinking we're going to be standing there in only our own garments, we're going to perhaps be not as well dressed as what we could be. You know, we have to be covered with the works that he has accomplished. He's light. We have got to assume his garments, you know, and take off our own filthy garments and put clean ones on. Which clean ones? Well, actually, Mashiach ben Yosef's clean garments, because he did maintain absolute purity under trial. You know, unlike the rest of us, which, you know, this is where we've got to be an advocate. You know, we are bombarded night and day with sexualization and temptation. Even watching the news, you know, the way that the news readers and the way that people dress, it's all sexualization, and you can't avoid it. You want to go buy anything, they use sex to sell everything, toothpaste, the lot. So end of the day, we're living in times of sheer and total depravity, and this is where we've got to have the circumcised lips. We have got to understand the level of depravity and testing and temptation that we are enduring, and we've also got to understand when we manage to even overcome one of those urges to sin, how powerful that resistance becomes, you know, and how worthy and wonderful that is to our Father in heaven, because we are getting tested to a very, very, very great degree. But our righteousness is nothing compared to the righteousness of Yeshua, you know, and part of his righteousness, we assume part of that righteousness. Yeah, we've still got to be doing everything we can below, because it's like I said, isn't it? There's two sides to circumcision. There's what God does from above, but there's what we do from below, and somehow we've got to unite them together. That's perfect circumcision. So yeah, we've got to be humble enough to accept that some of our righteousness comes via Yeshua, and what God did to us, what he gave us to us through Yeshua Mashiach, you know. And we've got to also recognise that as wonderful as our righteousness is, it's never going to elevate us that on its own up to the level of Melech Malcheh. We've got to understand, God is involved in that circumcision, and some of that circumcision is the humility to accept what provision YHVH has made for us, and how he has been co-workers in circumcising our hearts and circumcising our lips, just as he sent. There's nothing to be ashamed of. He sent Moshe, Aaron, because Moshe was at least humble enough to recognise his limitations. You know, we have been sent. Yeshua is a great, great gift. We've just got to have the humility to accept this great gift. Is for the glory of his name to be revealed. You know, we have also contributed ourselves. It's all wonderful. It all works together. Evil inclination. Can't see where I've got that from now. Must be one of those numbers. It might become more apparent. So let's have a look. Is it 664? Don't know why I've included it. Very rarely do I include things. All right, Samael there, yeah. 666, 664. No, it might become apparent. And it was a delight to the eyes. So this is Eve being tested, isn't it? And the fruit was a delight to her eyes. So again, you know, this is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which we've eaten from, that's then put us to be subject to all these opposite forces, where we're able to perceive something other than Yod He Vav He, when in truth there is nothing other than Yod He Vav He, but there's a plan in everything. Okay. And there we go, look, we've got this connection up here, and to buried in Shechem, may his name be erased in his memory. 643, 121 ordinarily, 764, which is 4 times 191. We've already come across this, but I hope you can appreciate now it's even connected to this concept. Like I say, Moshiach ben David, the throne of Moshiach ben David is Moshiach ben Yosef. You simply have to accept the truth, the provision that Yod He Vav He is made through Yeshua HaMashiach. And if not for you, what he made for those that had no merit whatsoever according to the letter of the Torah. You know, that's the level of King David. It's not just from our own selfish perspective, it's a much more global, united perspective. And if you can't accept, if you don't feel like God needed to make this provision for you personally because you're so righteous, you've been able to keep all the Torah so perfectly in a way that's so pleasing to Yod He Vav He without falling prey to any temptation whatsoever, if you're so perfect, then to go before Yod He Vav He in your own righteousness, then that's absolutely fine. You have a choice. But it's not the case for everybody, because some of us are more than aware of our weaknesses and how much we do fall short of that level. And even when we have worked very, very hard to fight against extreme levels of oppression and falsehood and doubts, you know, there is always elements to our personality that remain not fully corrected. That level of perfection may not come. Who does it come to? How many people have truly absolutely reach that level of complete perfection? I don't know. I've never met anybody personally. So if you feel like you can stand and you are perfected before God through your own efforts, then all good and well, but for not all of us can have that secure confidence. I certainly don't, and I've tried very, very hard and to erase to erase my own ego, and I will gladly accept the righteousness of Yeshua, what he's done to make a provision for me and suffer with me, because I know that I didn't get to where I am without him. It's just as clear as that. I do not stand in my own righteousness, and I also it's not just Yeshua. My Jewish brothers have pulled me up from the depths, just from the light that they've shone into this world, through the Torah books that I've been able to read, that have illuminated my soul and drawn me closer and closer. Yes, it is the suffering of Mashiach that broke that initial stronghold of evil that I was enslaved into, but it's the Jews that have, my Jewish brothers and sisters have also illuminated my soul and lifted me up. So I can't stand there in my own righteousness, because I didn't write those books that drew me up from the depths. You know, so as much I do cling to the righteousness of Yod He, what Yod He Vav He did through Yeshua, but I also stand on the shoulders of those giants that have gone before and illuminated the path that I now walk upon. You know, and it's a humbling thing, and I'm glad that I can say that. I am so glad, because it's the truth. I'm not speaking lies. You know, I'm speaking the truth. So all these things to me are just wonderful. This is the unity between Yosef and Yehuda, isn't it? These are the two sticks coming together. You know, and it's very humbling, and it makes you feel closer to Yod He Vav He, because every book you read and every moment of illumination that you had in that great darkness and exile that we've all suffered, it's just like fresh air. It's just like being able to breathe. You know, it's such a gift, and YHVH is such a master planner. You know, everything is divine providence. Every book you read, every sentence that you read, it's somehow by divine providence. It's all wonderful. You know, we don't stand in our own righteousness because it doesn't exist. This state doesn't exist. We stand because of the righteousness of those that have gone before him, and I certainly stand because of what Yeshua's done for me. And if I can be a guiding help to anybody in this world, if I can help illuminate my Jewish brothers' eyes to the truth about Yeshua HaMashiach, then as much as they've illuminated my path and caused me to be elevated up to the presence of YHVH, then I would hope to be able to do the same. You know, it's just the way that YHVH has worked. He's united us all together in a wonderful way, where we all depend on one another. You know, and it's wonderful. And it's wonderful. And that kind of unity and that recognising that we don't just stand on in our own righteousness, but we are united in each other's righteousness. This is where Moshiach ben David is revealed within, isn't it? This is our circumcised heart when we're humble enough to accept that truth, and it's a wonderful truth to be able to accept. Right, moving on. So we've got Sa'el. This also comes to 643, which is related to this, and this Sa'el is really the concept of Hashem hidden in the evil in this world. Okay, I can't go into too many details now, but Baal Shem Tov instructed us in that. Sa'el is the name of God, or a godly name, should I say, that's related to that what I've just said, that God even hides in the evil. So even the darkest, deepest parts of exile, it's all Hashem. There's a plan for it all, you know, and we are witnesses to that. And the righteousness that we have attained in our struggle to stand up in this filth and depravity and darkness, and to proclaim his name and the truth that he has done in us, in our lives, is just goes to show there's only YHVH and nothing else beside him. In Visions, Mer'oth comes to 643. I think that's something connected to Yisrael, i.e. Yaakov. Anyway, I've not put the actual verse up. So right, so this is the whole Erev Rav and a retro sated with food. So it talks about, you know, the slave who rules and a retro is sated by food. So the king who rules is Metatron, and the retro is sated by food is the Erev Rav. It's the Erev Rav that dominates over Moshe, the Torah of Moshe. This is a retro is sated with food. That comes to 1286. It's the Erev Rav mindset that dominates over Yehuda that prevents them from seeing that YHVH has been working even in the deepest, darkest evil possible, and it also prevents them from accessing, may his name be erased in his memory, the truth about Mashiach ben Yosef and all that YHVH has been accomplishing. But it won't be long, because they are not going to be subject to Erev Rav lies and domination forever. The man became a living soul. So this is very messianic, isn't it? Ha'adam lenefesh chaya. This is when YHVH breathes into him, and the 110 ordinal of that is exactly the same ordinal for Yeshua HaMashiach. That comes to 643, so connected to all these. And then when he knows to reject bad and choose good, this is, well, it's actually when he knows to reject bad and choose. We have to fill in the gap, don't we? Choose good. And so that's just part of that statement. That comes to 1286, which is 2 times 643. You know, connected to all these. We've got to reject the bad. What is the bad? Metatronic mindset. Tree of the light, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You know, we've got to reject that slave mentality, that exilic mentality. We've got to reject that. We've got to choose to be Hebrews, inspired by the truth, with our eyes open. And we've got to choose life. YHVH himself. Yosef made himself known. So this is what is going to empower us to choose good. We need to first know. Yosef needs to make himself known to us, and what that is, it will empower us to choose good. Yaakov, when it says it, the truth empowers Yaakov. Yaakov is known as the good inclination. Okay, so it's like our soul dominating over our body. Esav is the bad inclination, evil inclination. Up here, look, this is Esav, and that good that we choose, we've got to reject the evil and choose good, Yaakov. Cup of blessing, this is synonymous with the cup of salvation talked about in the Zohar, and it's got 5 sepals around it, represented by your 5 hands. Your 5 right hands, by the way, that are your 5 aspects of chesed. Okay, so the Moshiach is really those 5 leaves that surround the cup, the 5 petals that surround the rose, the 13 petaled rose, which is Knesset Yisrael, which are really the 13 tribes of Israel. There's 13 in total, 12, and then there's Levi, and then there's the 5 sepals that are the 5 salvations that surround it, and this is likened to your hands holding the cup of salvation, which is also synonymous to this cup of blessing. As you can see, it's all related to a revelation where Yosef makes himself known. And the 5 aspects of Mashiach must unite as one. We'll come across them at some point, but you've got Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, Moshe Yaakov, and Serach bat Asher. They're the 5 sepals. You can how do you know that? Well, if you analyse all the Messianic texts, these are the names that come up over and over and over and over and over again with such frequency that you have to think, well, there's more than one aspect to the Mashiach. There's actually 5 main aspects that are frequently coming up every single Messianic thing you look at. So these must represent the 5 salvations that are talked about in the opening of the Zohar. And when you do the numbers of those 5, it adds up to, it adds up and links up to everything. So you know without question that they are the 5 sepals, the strong leaves that surround Knesset Yisrael, and that represent the cup of salvation, the cup of Yeshua. Although I will sit in darkness, the Lord is a light to me. Micah 7:8, 936, which didn't highlight it up here. That's this one, isn't it? 936. Okay. And then we've also got this. 936 is 8 times 117. So this is a filling out of Yeshua, 117. This is the first filling of Yeshua. And it's also the Mispah Gadol of Shalom. So that's the state that we're wanting to get to. We're wanting to get to a state of Shalom. And this is the state that Mashiach ben David brings. Behold, they have refined you. So that comes to 860. So we have simply been in a process of being refined. In order, circumcised, basically. It's circumcised. That's what we've been. And then we've got Abraham. So we've got the Mispah Gadol of Abraham, and I've already pointed that out. This is the advocate, 8 times Michael, and that's also the gematria for Moshiach, the ordinal for Mashiach. Add them together, 860. So we've got a link there, and a link up to Abraham, up here. This is Chesed, the heart, all loving kindness. It's all on the right hand side, isn't it? Then Yerushalayim 586 plus 82. So we've got a link up there to the 82 Mashiach ben David and the 82 Melech Malcheh. And we've also got the Mispah Gadol of Yerushalayim coming to 94. So we've got exactly the same ordinal Mispah Gadol up here. So we've got 82 there, 94 there. We've got 82 for the regular, 94 for the Mispah Gadol. So we add them up together, 82 and 94, and we get to the 176, which is there. So Melech, where is he king of? He's king of Jerusalem. And we want to see that revealed. And then, for the entire gate of my people know that you are a valiant woman. Ki yodea kol asher ami. So this is about Ruth, who was the great grandmother of King David. So she's at 860, related to all these. And she's also the 176, related to Jerusalem. From her came forth Melech David, King David. So we've got an obvious connection to Melech Malcheh and Ruth, because she was very humble, weren't she? She was also a convert, you know, but she was very, very humble. And even though, and she was a righteous convert, she converted for the right reasons. She converted for the sake of the name YHVH. His right hand and his holy arm, that also comes to 176. So these, and connected up to Malcheh. And we're talking about his right hand, aren't we? We've just been speaking about the right hand side of divinity, you know, the chesed, loving kindness. This is the ideal condition of our heart, isn't it? To feel loving kindness for our fellow man and towards YHVH as well. And then this is absolutely wonderful. For with you is the source of life, in your light we see light. We're going to at some point see how that's connected to Yosef, but the mispar gadol of that's 2786 is 7 times 199. That links us up to this concept, unity between Moshe and Yeshua, this Malachim, kings, and then this who makes peace. And as we can see through those two numbers, that links us also, where is it, to buried in Shechem, to Yosef. And then there is connections obviously to that back up here. Okay, it's all wonderful. So and we can see that it's through Yosef primarily that we see the light of the name YHVH. Let's go and have a look at this next one. So now we're going to look at YHVH, aren't we? We've just had a look at King over Kings, which is Moshiach ben David. Now it's King over Kings of Kings. Okay, so this is YHVH. So we've got 335 seat over. We probably won't seat over today. 146 and then 481. And all these other numbers. And I'll point them out once we get to them. However, this number here, which is, these are the mispar gadols. So the mispar gadol of King over Kings of Kings, 1375, 1375 plus 169 comes to 1544. 1544 is 4 times Yeshua. That's also connected as well to what we've just read, in your light. For you are the source of light, in your light we see light. Let's go and have a look at some of these numbers then. So this is directly related to, let's have a look, let me get the numbers right here. Right, so we've got the 481 here, 481, and then this is related to this down here, 3 times 481, and these are the two words that Yosef spoke to try and get him out of prison. They ended up, these are two aspects of faith, he ended up in prison suffering for another 2 extra years, because he said to the cupbearer, remember me and take me out, and he ended up an extra 2 years in prison. Okay, so Moshiach ben Yosef is suffering 2,000 years, the 2 big years, 2,000 years, so that was 1988 years ago, according to Sir Isaac Newton's astronomical calculations. So we're very close to the end basically. He has got to have full years, but there is that provision, isn't there? In its time I shall hasten it, so we could bring it essentially early. It just depends whether we reveal the truth, because we saw, didn't we, how hasten it is synonymous with the truth. It's exactly the same gematria as the truth. The truth is what will hasten redemption. To what degree we can reveal that truth and how quickly we can reveal that truth. And people don't want to receive the truth. They've got a lot of ego barriers that's preventing them from accessing the truth. That 95, remember me, is Hamelech. And then this one, that's 8 times 71, which is Yonah. The 82 is Moshiach ben David. And then this 568 is 2 times 284. 284 is the ordinal for the entire books of the Torah. Okay, so take me out of where will we ultimately take him out of? Well, we need to take him out of we need to see him revealed from the 5 books of Torah. When we ultimately take him out, we will be taking him out because he's fully revealed in every 5 books of Torah. We will be able to take him out in a very cautious and legitimate way. We will be able to take him out of his exile. And it will be through the books of the Torah that we take him out. Why? Because the Torah reveals who Moshiach is. The Torah reveals very clearly that the Mashiach ben Yosef is Yeshua. So we will be able to take him out. So we've got all those links. It's linked up in other ways. And then my sheaf, why is he being in exile? Collecting his sheaf. Okay, so we see that's a direct link to Malech, Malchei, Malachim. So there's got King David. That we saw how King David is related to Melech Malchei. The revelation of YHVH comes primarily through Moshiach ben Yosef. Okay, he's the king over kings of kings. Okay, so all the suffering of Moshiach ben Yosef reveals the king over king of kings. Yosef's sheaf, the entire pomegranate orchard, is to reveal the truth. This is related to the statement in Tanakh which says Pardes, okay, that number, and then 529 is 23 times 23, which equals Chaya. 23 equals Chaya. We're trying to rectify Chaya. That's Eve. That's her rectified, and it's also the soul level of Mashiach ben David. Keep the month of spring. That comes to 116 ordinally, which is at Mashiach ben Yosef. Ordinal of Mashiach ben Yosef, and then there's a connection here, isn't there, up to here. So we're talking about the calendar. When I did analysis of the calendar, and it being the lunar solar calendar, not this Enoch Metatronic solar calendar alone, this is one of the verses that you need to analyse, because this is which specifies exactly when the year begins, and the Chodesh of the new year begins, and it also brings about a revelation for all the underlying concepts that ultimately bring unity between the Mashiach, okay, and ultimately reveal what YHVH is doing. But it's very clear in Torah, it's not a solar calendar. It's very much connected to it's connected to the spring equinox, for example, the beginning of the year, and it's connected to the new moons. And that verse, analysing that verse, brings that revelation about. I can't go through that in this particular teaching, but eventually in this teaching, when we get to how time is, what is time within the Torah, and how is that time measured, and the cycles that are in place, it's all connected to a revelation of the Mashiachim. It's absolutely 100% connected to ultimate revelation of the Messiah, because, like I say, we've got to transcend time. Okay, we've got to enter into messianic consciousness. So the whole concept of the Mashiach is very much linked to the cycles of time, in order for us to make that transition. Evil, this is another name for shepherd in the Torah, but it's also a name for evil. That comes to 275, so that's linked up there. Look, the Mispar Gadol of King over Kings of Kings. He is the ultimate shepherd, but what we've got there instead is evil shepherds, and that's also related to this concept of keep the month of spring. This is the Pesach, the month of Nisan, so we've got to get Nisan right so that we can celebrate Pesach. Right, 41 is Kisei David, David's throne, and 316 is Yeshu. That's the evil shepherds of the Erev Rav that erased his name, but it's for an ultimate good. What they meant for evil, YHVH meant for good. Seeing that I am closed lips, so we've got a direct link, haven't we, to Moshe there with his circumcised lips. We've got to go through that process with Hashem's help from above of opening our lips up so that we can proclaim the unity of the name YHVH, for the sake of his unity to be revealed. The Lord gives sight to the blind. Exile blinds us. The suffering of exile blinds us to the truth. We want to reveal YHVH. We're going to have to deal with that blindness. You know, we're going to have our eyes opened. 146, so we can see the link up there. Who makes peace? So we've got this concept come up again. Why? Let's just have a look. Oh yeah, because it comes to who makes peace. 751 plus 91 comes to 845, which is 5 times 169. Okay, so that's linked up there to there. And 169 is 13 times 13. It's the number of letters of the 13 attributes of mercy in Exodus. And the 94 is 2 times Yaakov. We've already gone through that. And we've already gone through these, haven't we? So I don't need to go through these. We went through these on the last slide. But it's worth pointing out that ultimately the 13 attributes of mercy are a revelation of the name YHVH within the letter of the law, and that's what needs to be united with the Torah of Moshiach, which is the 13 attributes of mercy, the name revealed above the letter of the Torah, because we were without merit. According to Torah, we needed something above the Torah. I've already gone through buried in Shechem. I've already gone through you shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart. So why have I got that up? Don't quite fully understand. Maybe this will be. Alright, so here, this is unbelievable. Talked about the 5 aspects of the Redeemer. Okay, let me just see why I've got that up, because I very rarely put numbers up. Alright, that as well, you know, the 191 that we just went over for the Mashiach, that's related to that, isn't it? I can't figure out what that is, but 2381, where did I get that number from? 2381, I can't see it. Might have to come back to that, might have to do a search and come back to that. But anyway, it comes to Chava times Melech Goyim. YHVH desires to be king over the nations as well as king over Israel. It's just a simple revelation from Torah. Okay, a very basic revelation. 14. So these are the 5 sepals. These are the 5 sepals, the 5 strong leaves that surround the cup of salvation, and surround the 13-petaled rose. The 13-petaled rose, which is Knesset Israel, the congregation of Israel. So we've got Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, Moshe, Yaakov, and Serach bat Asher. Add them up, they comes to 2025, which is exactly the same as the regular plus the Mispah Gadol. Okay, 2000. This is what I mean by when you put these together, it links up with absolutely everything. All these numbers link up with loads of very, very key significant places. So that's why I know that they are the 5 sepals that surround the rose. And then again, Moshe is the umbrella term, because Moshe is the overall Mashiach. He was the first Redeemer, he'll be the last Redeemer. He was Yeshua HaMoshiach, and he's connected to all the other aspects. He's obviously connected to Serach, because together they got the bones of Yosef, and Serach's connected to Yaakov because she was the one that livened Yaakov. So there's a connection, and it all goes back to Moshe ultimately, and that's why that's 81 times 25, and that's Moshe filled. What else have we got? Okay, so here again we've got 3 major connections now to this, haven't we? For with you is the source of life, and in your light we see light. So 1266 there is linked up to Yosef. This is the remember me and take me out, isn't it? Okay, remember me and take me out, come to 1266. That's why we know the light of Yosef is the light in which we see the light of YHVH. And then we've got this connection here. 7 times 199 is the Mispah Gadol of that verse. So that's connecting to us all, that with 199. Mashiach Yeshua, Moshe and Yeshua, Melachim, and all this who makes peace. This is the process. Circumcise your hearts, and everything else we've already gone through on the last one as well, buried in Shechem, Yosef. And then we've also got this connection, look. We've got 3 connections to this all the way back up here, because that number there, 1544, is the Mispar Gadol plus the ordinal. Okay, it's 3088, which is 2 times 1544, 8 times 386, and 386 is Yeshua. So we've got to be very clear, Yeshua is the vital key ingredient in establishing YHVH as the King over kings of kings. Okay, and that, with that, I can say shalom. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you get to the end. I hope you got to the end, I should say. Please subscribe.